What is going on? I want to welcome you from Half Court for today, Wednesday, August 30th, 2023. I am one of your hosts, Sean Murphy, alongside the man, the myth, the legend, the Marquette Heat, sitting in his seat at 6'3". It's Sergey. Troy, I'm the reason why it's just you and I this week. This time, I'm the one that done up. It's good to see you. It's just you and I. And the reason why is because I'm an idiot. But it's good to see you nonetheless.
It's good to see you, Sean. And yeah, I was supposed to record last night, but someone didn't set an alarm, and we're good.
I did set an alarm, and it just decided to not happen, apparently. But I mean, you know what? That's it is what it is. That's the struggle of the off season. And hey, you won't know. I mean, the episode's still coming out at the same time. You know what I mean? But Troy, nonetheless, I like literally right after we recorded last week's episode, there were some pretty significant developments in the Pistons world. Not actually significant as far as like long-term implications. However, there was some credence to some reporting done by someone on this podcast, and we got to talk about that here in a minute.
Rico Hines. Hines.
Yep, absolutely. But also the World Cup is officially, finally, actually underway. We could talk more about that too and some actual takeaways that we have from it. But first, Troy, this is from Half Court. Each and every week we get together, we talk all things basketball. It's generally three of us, but today it's two of us because I'm an idiot. But if you like this podcast or you like this video, smash that notification button, hit that subscribe button as well so you don't miss any of the content that we have here either. But also, be sure you're following our guys on Twitter. You can follow Jeff on Twitter at JeffIafrady, and you can go see what he's up to. You can also go see my guy Troy at Troy Sergey 44. Troy, I know we said it last week. I'm glad it's the last week of August. Get to September. Get to when we're actually close to training camp. I hate this madness. I need basketball in my life badly.
Yeah, absolutely. And WNBA has some good basketball right now, heading into their playoffs, I think, in 2 weeks. But FIBA, certainly fun to watch those guys. But yes, there's nothing like good old regular season. You got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sometimes games a night. That is where it's up, Sean. So I'm looking forward to opening night at the end of October. But I mean, we're going to be getting preseason the whole month of October, which is going to be great.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, Troy, we went from, we as a fan base, or at least I personally went from having a hard time stomaching preseason NBA basketball at one point to now salivating over run footage that gets posted on YouTube. Like, not actually salivating, because you don't take too much away from it, and legit in all seriousness. However, I mean, it's just basketball to watch. And from that standpoint, you put it in your veins. You take whatever you can get. And I mean, Troy, we got a meaty sampling of Pistons basketball from this Rico Hines footage last week. We got to see, not only did we get to see Cade Cunningham, as reported by that one idiot guy from Half Court Pod. I forgot that guy's name, but all I've heard about him, Troy, is he's an idiot. So I think
maybe I'm just dumb.
but maybe I'm just dumb.
I am. But I obviously, in all seriousness, I reported a couple weeks ago that Cade was indeed at Rico Hines, and he indeed looked like the best player in the gym. And Troy, as you recall, when I made that report, a lot of people were like, all right, let's go. I'm hyped. But also a lot of people were like, hey, with the footage isn't out, we're going to have to wait to see it to believe it. It was just reported by Sean Murphy. It's got to be true. But it was actually true because, if you paid attention, my reports haven't been wrong yet. have they, Troy?
2 for 2.
Three for 3.
What's the third one? What am I missing?
All right, Cade.
Oh, Jalen Duren aspect of it. Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Yep.
3 for 3.
Yep. Absolutely. But anyway, with that, I mean, we saw that Cade was the best in the gym, and I think he was every bit as advertised in that footage. But Troy, to me, the equation gets far more interesting when you expand it beyond Cade, because it wasn't just Cade that we got to see. We got to see Jalen Duren. We got to see Ausar Thompson. We got to see some Jaden Ivey. We got to see some, we got to see some Jalen Duren, like we got to see, Isaiah Stewart as well. Like there was, there was the other, what we believe to be like the other core 4, of this team, so to speak, going forward. And in their showing, granted, it's Rico Hines, it's off-season basketball, so we don't necessarily read into the results or anything, but from what we saw, there were stretches where this team was looking dominant. Now, they're playing against guys in the likes of, Norman Powell was there, Russell Westbrook was there, I believe Bones Highland, was there as well. There were a lot of solid NBA players that, that took place in this pro run. I think Cade was clearly the best guy there. But I think if there were a couple things that stood out to me, Troy, personally, from that tape, number one, Isaiah Stewart's jump shot looked like absolute butter. He looked phenomenal. And, I think, it just gave me more reason to be excited for what his, 4th season in the league can look like, because I think we're going to really start to see Isaiah start to really look, more like a veteran in this league. But also the other thing that stood out to me, Jalen Duren. Every time I see this guy in a gym setting, my jaw drops because of something. Just because the way this kid is poised and plays basketball and does things at 19 is unfair. Obviously, we didn't see all the jump shots, Troy. We saw him shoot and make some threes. But, I mean, in addition, even when he was out in the break as well, I mean, he just had his way. And the most important thing, he and Cade already have a natural chemistry. Mm-hmm. Like those guys already play basketball really well together. So what were your takeaways from the footage? Again, with the caveat of this is just summer Rico Hines run footage. However, even if the setting wasn't the NBA, these guys looked like they're ready to hoop in the NBA.
Well, the biggest thing I took away from it was actually with a guy that you had to name, Jaden Ivey, right? I mean, I think his athleticism, I mean, we know what he can do. I mean, with the amount of games he played last year, his rookie year, I mean, we really saw a piece of what Jaden Ivey is. But now I think we're starting to see what he can be. And just that athletic freak, right? That motor. I mean, how a point guard can leap and sprint as fast and as jump as high as he can. I think that's going to be something that the Pistons need. I mean, he's a guy that's so difficult to guard. I mean, even some of your best perimeter defenders have a hard time guarding Jaden Ivey because of how explosive and quick he is. So that was one thing I saw. You already touched on Stu's jump shot. That looked good. But yeah, I mean, that Cade and Duren chemistry, that was something that, we didn't get to see a lot of last year. But, the few games we did see from Cade, there was already something brewing. And the offseason, I think, is an opportunity for those guys to really get even more and more chemistry going. So I'm not really worried about that to the season, to be honest. I mean, this sounds crazy to say, Sean, but I think Jalen Duren is our most underrated player.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely he is. I
think moving forward, he is such an important piece to our team.
Not from the fan base, not from the Pistons world, because I think we know exactly who Jalen Duren is, but from the rest of the league standpoint, the fact that they have no idea that the Jalen Durans on the other side of the rainbow, so to speak, waiting to, cause hell and wreak havoc to a lot of these teams. Like, if I was an NBA team and I forgot him on the scouting report, I know for a fact I would lose my job. But, but it in all seriousness, like I think, like when you look at, obviously, I think he is like a very underrated piece when you're looking at, like what we're going to be long term. But, at the same time, like we can see why, Troy Weaver is as invested, as he is and isn't, and wouldn't put a cap on what his ceiling can be in the long term. And I mean, especially we saw just, like we knew individually a lot of these guys could be spectacular, but it's just the confirmation of, but with Cade, it's another level.
Yep. You got it.
The things with me with Jaden Ivey, like, the offensively, I don't know if there was things that he did that I haven't seen him do already, which like that's not a knock on Jaden Ivey. That's just like he's super skilled. So like, I've seen him do a lot of the stuff that he did in his rookie season. The moments that stood out to me were some of the defensive moments where it actually, where he did a solid job of staying in front of his defenders. And, like, I just, the more I saw, like, like Jaden Ivey, like within these runs and even, even within summer league, like, it seems like even within these exhibition, games, he's taking his defensive runs and licks seriously. And so, like, if we get a focused and, dependable Jaden Ivey on the defensive end, I mean, that part of the equation, that's going, like, that in itself can get us, a couple more wins if Jaden Ivey is, active on the defensive end. Because I mean, you have an athletic weapon like that. Now imagine if he can strip balls in the open court. Now imagine if he can get more chase down blocks. Imagine if he can cause turnovers or wreak havoc and cause it to go the other way. I mean, those are the things that can just take you to a different level.
Right. And those things are just so exciting to know that these guys are 19, 20, 21, Cade's only 21, right? Years old. So I think that's something that is so exciting. And I've said this before, this upcoming 2023-2024 season, yes, it's important. Yes, it's a year where we take the turn, but it's not going to be peak Detroit Pistons with this roster.
It's still a foundation year.
It's still a foundational year. So what I'm saying is we're talking about these guys, we're talking about their development, but the peak of this upcoming season, it's not their peak, right? It's just development. It's more foundational work. It's more reps. It's more scoring. It's learning more how to score. I mean, these guys scoring in the NBA and scoring in college is a lot different. And I think Ivy was one that we really saw him figure that out slowly towards the end of the year. But I'm just excited to see what he can do this year. And we know what Cade can do. So yeah, I just don't want Pistons fan to put all their eggs in one basket with this season, because that would be a mistake.
If I had to describe it, Troy, I think we're a year away from being a year away, in the sense that I think that we are in a solid position to make a push for the play-in tournament, to make some noise. When I say a year away from being a year away, I mean, I think in 2 years we can be a serious playoff team, potentially
a fourth seed, maybe.
Like a top 5, top 6 team in the conference. Like, I think in 2 years you can look at this team as a serious force in the league. But I think if you're looking at the timeline and the trajectory and what are some realistic, actual goals that this team can hit, what are some landmarks and some milestones that this team can hit along their path and along their journey, like, at least to me, like, I think the biggest one, as far as this season goes, is find your identity, make some noise. Like this season, Troy, I'm going to be happy if by the end of it, we unequivocally know exactly what this team is, as far as like when they're on the court and when they're off the court. I think we have a very good idea of what they're building. We've talked about it for a long time. It's time to see it with our eyeballs and to see it in motion.
Right. And I think the scene is set for that exact scenario to come forth. So
absolutely, without a doubt, they have everything that they need in abundance It's just a matter of things actually going according to plan, of guys being readily available. Like the biggest thing is, like with Cade with all these runs, it's obviously, like on one hand, it's exciting to see him go out and, hooping and doing what he does. But like on the other hand, you want to wrap him in bubble wrap because it's like you don't want this season to, be like last year where it's over before it even began. But on the other hand, like again with that, like, with a lot of the worries of, of Cade with his injury stuff, like, to call him injury prone is just, I just think again is just misconstruing of his actual circumstances. But Troy, perhaps the biggest conversation that came out of Rico Hines, at least from what I saw, was about Ausar Thompson. And namely, I mean, this guy keeps looking awesome every time we watch him play basketball. And the biggest sentiment and the most, like the biggest take I keep seeing is he has to start. He has to be in the starting five. There is no world where he can be coming off the bench. Like he has to be starting for this team. I love the optimism. I love the, the desire to see this guy play. But Troy, does it really matter if Ausar is coming off the bench to start the season, but he's still playing 25, 30 minutes a game?
No, for two reasons. I mean, one, it's not about who starts the game. It's about who finishes. That's something we've been preaching for a long time.
What's that? What's that? I've never heard of that.
It's not about who starts. It's about who finishes. Yeah. But also, I mean, the best example that we can look at in recent years is Jalen Duren himself. Last year, he did not start right off the bat, but he eased his way in by even just month 2 in the starting lineup. No, I mean, he's a rookie. Do all good rookies need to start from day one? No. I would hope if you're a solid, guy with potential and, you're a lottery pick, a top 5 pick, nonetheless, you're in that rotation from day one for sure. And that's what I expect from Ausar Thompson, is to be in that rotation, playing that 25 minutes a night type of, minutes, and then seeing improvements. And slowly but surely, game 28, game 29, we may turn on the Pistons on TV and see him in the starting lineup. It just doesn't have to be a day one thing.
Right.
Because we don't see that with even the best stars sometimes. We're in a position where we can be as flexible with Ausar Thompson as we want. And that's the luxury of having a guy like Cade Cunningham on our roster again, is we want Ausar to pan out. We believe he will. He has all the intangibles and potential too, but we're not putting all our eggs as a franchise in Ausar Thompson.
Right. Well, and yeah, we're not putting the pressure on him day one to have to come out and run everything. He's not the straw that stirs the drink.
I would say even his brother might even have more pressure.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's fair because, I mean, like Amen is coming into a situation where, he's going to have to be a pretty primary ball handler, day one. They're still figuring out, like, who the guys really are over there. Whereas in this circumstance, I think Asar's role will be pretty defined. But, it's kind of interesting, Troy, because a lot of the buzz and a lot of the arguments of see, he has to start comes from this Pistons depth chart that was, supposedly posted by ESPN the other day. First of all, just a little inside baseball here for, just this a little freebie for everyone at home. This is not a real depth chart. This is a projection. See down here where it says presented by RotoWire? This is a fantasy sports company that is making a projection as to what they think their rotation will be going into the season. Do you notice a couple interesting things about this depth chart, Troy? It has Isaiah Stewart on the bench. Isaiah Stewart is not going to be coming off the bench. This will not be our starting 5 going into the season. I am confident. But also, even if it was, do you really think we're going to find it out from ESPN before training camp? This this is merely a projection. But
And why do they have Isaiah Livers twice in the third lineup?
Because he would because I mean, this is your third, this is your third string. You don't technically, I mean, yeah, that's semantics. But I mean, in all reality, Troy, I mean, like, these mean nothing. And like, I see people post that, like, oh, see, like, yeah, Ausar has to start. And it's like, well, I think certainly he's going to have, a presence in a rotation. I certainly think day one, even if he doesn't start, Troy, I still think he's going to finish with the top 5 minutes played per game.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And not just that, but when you look at some of the defensive analytics with stats, I think he's going to be up there with those. You just think even steals, I would hope maybe Ivy leads the team, but I mean, I could see Ausar as a second or a third.
It would be, obviously it'd be really cool to see Ivy develop that skill set and become that guy. I think as long as you have someone on that side of the ball who's leading the charge and generating turnovers, you know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
Obviously, that'd be cool to see Ivy do, but I mean, I think what we saw, and I think the reason why people felt so confidently this way, Troy, is because Ausar balled.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just call it the way it is. He had impressive moments on both sides of the ball, and I think I think the reason why, if I were to, if I were to try and actually say what I think the fan base is trying to say, because the conversation is Ausar needs to start. Ausar needs to start. Ausar needs to start. And while I agree that I would say it, that Ausar needs he doesn't need to start day one, but Ausar needs to have a significant role day one, because because everything we've seen has given us evidence to believe that he is a winning basketball player.
Right.
And the more he's on the court, the more this looks like the Detroit Pistons. If I were to try to decipher what the fans actually feel, it's that. But in practice, but they think that means he has to start. When in reality, that's just who gets announced in the beginning and gets to take their jerseys off first. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, and I think with that, Sean, we want Ausar to be that guy, right? I mean, we know he has the skill set, and it's just exciting to know that we have another guy in house with potential. And I think when I think of Ausar, it's just at this point in the game when we haven't seen him on an official NBA court with official NBA competition, it's fun to dream.
Right.
And I think those dreams have the potential to become a reality, which makes it even more fun. But for me, man, I want to see what he can bring to the court. We know what he has potential to, but I want to see what those first 10 games look like. I'm just so excited for those first 10 games with an Ausar Thompson.
I think to essentially to reiterate what you're saying and essentially just to kind of put a bow on it a little bit. I know a lot of people are saying, I've seen enough. Ausar needs to do this. And although we've seen a lot of exciting stuff with Ausar, and you and I are just as big of believers of Ausar Thompson as anyone in the space, respectfully, until he's played on an NBA court with under NBA competition, we haven't seen nothing yet. And those are going to be the reps that ultimately tell where he's going to be and how long it's going to be until he's actually starting. But again, if you're talking about what's the actual best team composition, what's the best starting lineup for this team, what actually, what makes realistic sense, I don't know if that's the lineup opening night. It very well could be the lineup on to close the season. But again, the reality of it is, you're not just going to throw him out in the, to the wolves day one. And again, if he is, then that means he's proven that he's truly ready for it. That means that Monty Williams gave him the seal of approval. And if that's the case, That's exciting. I just don't think that's going to be the case day one.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And again, closing the season too is just as important. Not just closing the games, but closing the season. Of where have you developed? Where are you now? And not only that, but where are you going into the following season too? And we certainly that with Ivy's case. I mean, we know what we're getting out of Ivy this year because of what he pushed last year.
Right. So really what you're saying is pump the brakes, give it time. Let's see what he could actually do in the NBA.
Yes. However, I'm still high on him.
Oh yeah, 100%. 100%. If there's anything I'm confident about, he's going to be awesome defensively day one. Like at the very minimum, he's going to come in and wreak havoc on the defensive end. I know a lot of people were, trying, and again, this is where it gets tricky with Rico Hines footage. In case people didn't know, they cut that down to about 40 minutes. They didn't play only 40 minutes of basketball. They played far more than that. There were 2 courts. We only saw the winner's court. And even then, I'm pretty sure they cut out every miss. And so you only saw when guys were making shots. You only saw the winning court. So there's a lot of basketball we didn't see. Meaning, trying to make takeaways about guys' jump shots, about, how they're scoring, things like that. It's a tricky game to play. And one that I don't think, we got to play. But I think what we can say is that if Ausar's jumper is decent day one, like not like 20s, like it was in overtime elite for his 3-point percentage. Like if he can get to 35, 36%, and from beyond the arc, like pretty quickly, I think there will be a decent push to get him as many minutes as possible. But again, it doesn't necessarily matter if he starts. It really doesn't. I think again, this is one of the things we get from football, of like, you get your first round pick. He's got to start day one, because if he doesn't, then he's a backup, and he's playing behind someone. He doesn't necessarily get to play. But I mean, Troy, this is basketball. Like, you bring guys off the bench, you sub them in. They go to the scores table. They wait their turn. Like, you shuffle guys in and out pretty regularly. So it's a little different. A little different, at least to me it is. But Troy, holy crap, I'm surprised that we were able to talk that much Pistons at this stage of the summer. That's where it is. Like, we could any other day, any other week, we could go all day about the Pistons. In the summer, in August, we're lucky if we can get a half hour. Yeah. Oh my gosh. But Troy, you know what's something that has gotten me really excited, really hyped up, really, really glued to my couch when it's on?
What's that, Sean?
The FIBA World Cup. Ooh, baby. It has been fascinating, Troy. There are so many stories, so many different angles, things that we can touch this from. I'm not sure. Have you seen any of this? Any of the games? Have you seen any of the clips?
Yeah, quite a bit. Not probably as much as you, but I watched a lot of Shea. But with Team USA, I've watched every highlight game against Germany, against Greece. Yeah.
Right. Obviously, because, people are like, oh, well, what the heck? There's basketball going on. I don't see it when it's on in the evening. Well, you won't, because they're actually playing overseas. They're, in our time, it's actually on in the morning. If you go on ESPN Plus, you can actually watch several replays of games if you would like. But I mean, Troy, there's, like I said, a lot of action's already been underway. Team USA is, I believe they're actually, they're 2-0. And as we're recording, they will have played their 3rd game. They're going to be playing actually Jordan, on Wednesday at 4:30 in the morning, US Eastern time.
Wow.
But I mean, first of all, I mean, like, Team USA right off the bat, I mean, they're looking every bit as advertised as far as like what I think they can be. I think, from what I can tell, I think they have a pretty solid chance at the gold, but it's going to be interesting to see how things shake up. One of the teams that is always a contender in international play, Troy, France, went 0-2 in groups and got eliminated.
Does that say something about Rudy Gobert, or are we reading in between the lines?
Well, I mean, I was just about to say, like, like obviously that's where everyone's head goes first. I mean, I think in general, I think if you were to take a step back and like take a deep breath and go, what does this actually say? Well, I think first of all, I think if they had Wemby, I think things could have been, like things could have gone a little differently. Not saying that they would have won. However, let's be honest, having Wemby changes things a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. It increases your odds slightly.
Right, 100%. It's more so surprising, if anything. I'll say this much though, like for all the people that were looking for Rudy Gobert to come out and make a statement to prove something that this season was going to be different, I don't think they got that out of the World Cup at all. But again, I don't think that was realistic to look for anyway. Like this is just World Cup basketball. You know what I mean? But I mean, even then, like when I'll say this much. When Evan Fournier is your most reliable, offensive player, you're not gonna have a good time. Whether it's FIBA, whether it's NBA, whether you're playing at a park, whether you're playing against toddlers, even you'll still lose by 2 if Evan Fournier is your number 1 guy on offense. But I mean, Troy, you know who's a guy who could probably pummel some kindergartners in basketball? Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
Yeah,
he is balling out. He's making teams look like kindergartners in this open play right now. Have you seen the clips of Team Canada?
Yeah, quite a bit.
Yeah, they looked phenomenal. One thing from the World Cup that's still bizarre to see is obviously you see all the different players throughout the world, from the NBA representing their countries. Every time I watch Dylan Brooks pick up the basketball, I still think about the fact that he got $80 million from the Houston Rockets and that he's going to be playing with Jalen Green, Fred VanVleet. He's going to be under Ime Udoka. I just still can't get that out of my head, Troy. Whenever I watch Canada play, whenever by the way, he's like trying to be one of their. He's trying to act like he's every bit as good offensively as Shea out there. And I'm like, know your role. Know your role. Peace and love. Know your role.
Know your role when the season starts, especially. Man, dude, we should do a pod about teams where we're most intrigued to see, and maybe intrigued in a negative connotation, because Houston, man, that's more of a popcorn and movies kind of night, more entertainment.
They are going to be a league pass team, and it's not necessarily from day one going to be because of their basketball prowess.
Right.
Let's just say that much.
Yeah.
But I mean, nonetheless, I like if you were to ask me, who is the biggest legitimate threat to the United States right now for the gold, it's got to be Canada.
Right.
I mean, it has to be Canada.
Right. And everything has to do with Shea.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, even some other guys, for them that are pretty important, and I think will actually be a big difference maker as to like what they'll actually be able to do against the United States. It's actually 2 guys. It's Kelly Olynyk and it's Dwight Powell. And because for Team Canada, like those are 2 of their best big men. At least it is, at least it is this year. I'm not quite sure. I'm pretty sure those are the 2 best big men they have, to be honest with you, actually. And I'm not trying to say like that's a bad thing. And like those are 2 NBA level big men. Those are 2 guys, who can contribute, in solid rotation minutes on a night to night basis. But if we're talking about medal stages and we're talking about like the final games of of World Cup play, of Olympic play, your head immediately goes to, well, who do they have to stop or who do they have to face on the other side of it? And I mean, Team USA, I mean, you already expect them to have the best, to have the best talent there. That's they're Team USA. It's who they are. But on the flip side of it, I mean, when you're watching those teams and you're like, oh, well, how are they going to match up against Jaren Jackson Jr. in World Cup play? How are they going to match up against Paulo in World Cup play? Like, with Team USA looking as good as they have, with all due respect to, to Canada, like it's, it is definitely like, it is not looking as, as much like there's parity as there was quite a week ago. But there is still a wealth of talent all throughout the world, 100%.
Yeah, yeah. And I just think you're right. I mean, going back to just those two guys of, if you're building your NBA franchise, Dwight Powell and Kelly Olynyk might not be your two big men moving forward that you're putting all your eggs in. But for FIBA, I mean, yeah, I mean, when a lot of your competition isn't even NBA players,
right?
And you have two that serve each of their teams respectively in a role setting, yeah, you want that. To go along to go alongside of Shea, yeah, you want that,
right? But even I was even watching earlier today, Troy. Canada played Latvia in group play, and there was a point where Latvia was up by 12. And it's like, oh, well, how the heck did that happen? And it's like, well, they have Kristaps Porzingis, they have Davis Bertans, they do have some, they do have some NBA talent, and so. Like they for all intents and purposes, they couldn't really do much as far as like, protecting the paint, preventing much, action to happen there. And, I mean, let's be honest, when you look at, like Team USA, how they're, like their composition, everything that they have, like, I mean, they're set to dominate in the paint at the very least, like I think, it's not as favorable of a matchup as it might have initially looked. Like Team Canada might still have the better player because they have Shea, who's probably, him and Luka are the best players in this tournament, which I mean, Luka's just out there doing Luka things. That's
dude, one of my favorite players, if not my favorite player this year. I think he's going to have a great year, but those Dallas Mavericks need to get him some help.
Yeah, man.
He is more than a face of a franchise. Like, he is a generational talent. And if you only got Dirk one ring, and if you don't even get Luka one ring,
but I mean, but the thing is, on top of it all, though, Troy, like he looks great.
He looks like great shape.
Like this is this is the third summer in a row now where, like pretty much every summer now we get to watch Luka Doncic play basketball. It's pretty sick how that's worked out for us over the last few summers. But, like every time we've seen Luka play, you get a pretty good look at how he's looking going into the season. And last year, even though he was playing really good hoops, he did look a little bigger. There were some questions about his physique. He looks ready to start NBA basketball right now. And, as far as how the roster is set up, it definitely is more competitive than what it was when the season wrapped up for them last year. Yeah. So if Luka can actually hold his own on the defensive end of the court and cut down some of the complaining and some of the things that were preventing them from even reaching another level last year.
Yeah.
I think they're going to be incredible. I mean, but I mean, again, like, with Luka, it's, as long as he's on the basketball court, it's like, all right, he's going to be awesome. But an in shape Luka Doncic, that's just a different equation.
Right. Sean, one thing I just want to hear you touch on, and maybe in another pod we can go into greater details, but you saw the Giannis news this past week?
The Giannis, holy cow, I feel like I'm missing something.
Well, that he said that if the Bucks don't give him a championship direction with a roster and a vision, then he is probably going to walk in free agency.
Did he say that?
Thursday, the Bucks superstar telling the New York Times that he will not sign an extension with the team until he is confident they will continue to chase championships.
Whoa!
Yeah, Giannis says he doesn't plan on signing an extension until he knows the Bucks will continue to be part of it. This is SportsCenter. This is actual SportsCenter.
Oh yeah, you told. All right. So all right. I'm sorry, Troy. So
yeah, no. I'll let me look at your phone.
How did I miss this?
Yeah.
What the hell? This fell under the radar. My God. Okay. So Troy just caught me up to speed on this. I have no clue how I got this, how I didn't realize this until just on the pod. This is from an interview with the New York Times. Giannis said on his future I would not be the best version of myself if I don't know that everybody's on the same page. Everybody's going for a championship. Everybody's going to sacrifice time away from their family like I do. And if I don't feel that, I'm not signing.
Yep.
Troy, that is pretty cut and dry, pretty black and white, pretty straight up. If we don't have a chance to win, I'm out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean that's as blunt as you can be.
That is pretty cut and dry. And so, Troy, my initial thoughts right off the bat, listening to this and digesting this on the podcast, is I think Giannis is pretty cut and dry telling you if this is the roster when it's time for me to sign an extension, I'm not signing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think the really difficult thing for the Milwaukee Bucks is what do you have within your disposal to make this roster better right now?
Right, because you don't want to trade Holiday or Middleton.
Right, because what are you getting if you do?
Exactly.
Like you're not what trade piece do you have that actually makes this team better? And Troy, here's the answer. None.
Right, because even a Bobby Portis is a still great asset you want on your team to compete.
Right.
And what's his value anyway?
Right. But I mean, Troy, even though this is the first we saw, this is the first we saw Giannis officially come out and publicly confirm this and actually say something. This isn't the first we've seen from this story. Like if you recall, I think we talked a few months ago about how the Milwaukee Bucks owner sold their team. We talked about how, we're talked about into free agency about all these different factors and things that they were going to have, how important, how imperative it was for them just to stay together. Because, I think for one, I don't think, upon reflection, I don't know if Giannis is actually definitively saying this can't be the roster, otherwise I'm out. But I think what he is saying is if I don't see that this roster can still compete, then I'm out. And I think what I'm saying to you is I don't think this roster is going to be able to compete. I think, as awesome as this Bucks team, has been throughout the years, I do think that they have reached, the point where they're too old, where a guy like Chris Middleton, we've seen his best basketball, with Brook Lopez, he's been awesome for years, but when's the decline? We don't know.
Yeah. And I just, man, this first round exit hurt more than I think we want to admit. I mean,
of course it does.
Yeah.
Of course it does. Because Troy, now that you look at the totality of what they've done since 2019, it's nothing but disappointment with the championship as an outlier.
Yeah.
A lot of falling short, a lot of not getting where you're supposed to. This team, outside of their finals appearance, they've been to the conference finals twice, right? If I'm thinking correctly, they went when they faced Kawhi, when he was on the Raptors, and then they went when they made it to the finals, obviously. But outside of that, I don't think they made it past the second round.
Right, because in 2022, Boston beat the Heat.
Boston beat the Heat in the conference finals. They got over Milwaukee in the second round. So
so twice in 4 seasons, or 5 if you include the bubble.
Yeah. Well,
or no, they made it. It wasn't it. No, it was Heat and Celtics in the bubble as well.
Yeah.
So
they've only made it twice
in 5 seasons. For the true generational talent in this 2020s decade.
Yeah, with the best player in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Like pound for pound, the best player in the world. And, people might have already forgot, but the Bucks brought in a new head coach, new staff. They're still in a pretty new arena. They're coming under new ownership. They're, a lot of pieces that have been around from their previous championship reign. I mean, Troy, is it safe to say if this team doesn't make it to the conference finals again, Giannis is gone.
I might even say, yeah, I mean, that's for sure. But I would say there's even a chance if they make it to the finals and he doesn't think that the vision was correct in the finals. He didn't like the defensive schemes. He didn't like the touches. He didn't like his players' attitudes in the locker room. There's still even a chance he may walk, even if they make it and lose in the finals.
Right.
I would think.
Right. I mean, you know,
like
ultimately,
a Nuggets Bucks finals and they lose in 5 to Joker. I would think he would even want to walk after that.
And I mean, the other thing as well, you almost think them winning the championship is also, on the other hand, what opened the door for Giannis to leave Milwaukee one day as well, because
he tasted it. He tasted what it feels like.
Well, not only that, not only did he taste what it feels like, but he accomplished the goal. He delivered the goal to Milwaukee. Like, you know, like for LeBron, for example, I don't know if the decision would have been nearly as bad the first time if he had already won the championship in Cleveland. Right.
The fact he didn't deliver in Cleveland. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like if Giannis leaves, people aren't going to be like, oh, well, what we could have done. Like, how could you? Like, Giannis won us a championship. He delivered in Milwaukee like he said he wanted to. You know, like at the beginning of his career, he was like, I'm not interested in super teams. I want to win where I built it. He accomplished that goal.
Right.
But
so now it's time to look at the second half of his career.
And now we can now we can say, all right, I achieved that. You know, we did everything we set out to do in Milwaukee. Now it's time for the next chapter. And you know, the reports and the things that I'm seeing, you know, they're calling this news. I don't think this is news. The Lakers and the Knicks are reported to be interested if Giannis is available. That's like saying water's wet. That's like saying oxygen needed. You know what I mean? Like, of course, those teams would be going after him. But Giannis also said pretty straight up, you know, within this interview, you know, within this piece with the New York Times. And I mean, also just throughout his time in the league, Giannis has made it very clear. He does not care about which market's the biggest. He cares about where he's going to be able to win championships. And so, Troy, if the Oklahoma City Thunder if they find a way to get Giannis, this league is unequivocally like they are like Troy. Oh my God.
Shea and Giannis. Even a
Giannis
Wemby.
And Chet.
Yeah, a Wemby couldn't compete. An aging Durant, Booker, and
I think LeBron
Bradley
would
Beal
retire on the spot.
compete.
Like he was stressed when he had to think about facing Kevin Durant with the Warriors. He had to think about facing Giannis with the Thunder with all these guys. I mean, we could just mail the next few Larry O'Briens directly to their offices.
Right. I mean, then the Nuggets too would have certainly the biggest competition they've had yet.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean,
is
have
that a destination that you think is realistic? I mean, is there any other teams that come to mind?
I mean, Troy, I'm not ruling almost anybody out in these conversations. I'll almost certainly, you know, people aren't going to be thrilled with this. I'm going to rule out the Pistons. I just don't see it being a realistic conversation we can enter ourselves in, you know, especially not right now. You know what I mean? Like, especially if Giannis is like leaving in like the next year or so, we're not there yet. But I think every single team in the league, if you didn't pick up your phone to at least figure out what was going on, I would fire you on the spot. Like that. Like, of course, there's going to
all 29 teams outside of Milwaukee should be seeing what they can possibly do, even if it's unrealistic.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like, even if it's just for fun, even if it's just something they know ultimately they won't actually be able to do. Every single team in the league should be trying to diagram and put together what would it look like if we could go and swing and get the star right now? Because, you have to be ready for any circumstance. I think we've seen over the last 2 years, anybody can become available at any given time. And I mean, I think this is like the prime example of that. Like we have, I mean, Troy, on top of Damian Lillard already being available, this now means we could potentially have Joel Embiid and Giannis Antetokounmpo on the trade block. At some point, we could have Pascal Siakam traded. There's a realistic world that Trae Young could be on a different team this year. And those are just guys off the top of our head. Like the Knicks, they're in position to possibly go get Embiid. They're in position to possibly go get Giannis. I have no idea right now off the top of my head, like who I think actually will go do it. But I mean, right off the top of my head, when I think about teams that are in prime position to, the Knicks are definitely right there. The Thunder are sure as hell right there. Interestingly enough, is another team that could be right there if they wanted to be. The Jazz could position themselves and be there if they wanted to be. Here's a dark horse team. Watch out for the Nets, because they have all these picks that they don't own their picks going forward, so they have to win. They have assets. They have stuff they can trade. They just don't have their own picks, so they can't. They don't have a reason to tank. So, I mean, to answer your question, Troy, forget the decision. I mean, this could define the league for the next decade. Yeah. I mean, this is massive. I think I might have. I can't believe I missed this. That's just where I'm at. I'm just wrapping my head of like, how did this go under my radar? Holy cow! Like, this is straight from the horse's mouth. Giannis himself saying, "Yeah, if we ain't winning, why am I staying?" That's pretty big, man. Holy cow! And I mean, even then, like you talk about like the balance of power for years to come. What happens to Milwaukee if Giannis leaves?
Right, like poverty franchise, top 5 picks for the next decade.
Oh yeah, full rebuild, mega rebuild, right back to where the Bucks were before Giannis was awesome. But I mean, yet again, like that, their biggest thing is they're going to try to be piecemealing and doing things to, try and make it, viable for Giannis to stay long term. But I think in reality, they're going to be preparing for their future without Giannis. So if you're asking me right now what I think happens, Troy, I would give it a 15% chance he signs an extension with the Bucks.
Yeah, which is 85 that it's not.
Yes, exactly. Math. That is a thing. No, but I'll say this much. AJ Griffin, your job just got way more fun. Welcome to the league. Like, welcome to the league. Your first season hasn't even started yet. And your player,
even say the Heat get Dame, right? And then you got say Porzingis contributes well with Boston. That puts Milwaukee at an interesting position, playoff time, right? Because you at least you have to make it to the conference finals, like you said before. You have to, and you certainly want to get to the finals. And if you get to the finals, you might as well win it, right? There's a lot that has to go right. There's a lot that has to go right for him to work out in Milwaukee. Yeah.
Well, and here's another piece of the equation that we're not even talking about right now, Troy. I mean, technically, as of right now, Giannis is, he has a player option in 25-26. So as of right now, he's signed. They really concrete have Giannis for one more season. But what if over the next couple of years there's a catastrophic injury to a Chris Middleton, to a Brook Lopez, to a Drew Holiday, to one of these guys that's on the Bucks? What if there's a situation over the next couple of years where Giannis says, "Hey, I'm not staying. You might as well trade me and get whatever you can get for me right now"?
All three of those guys aren't young.
Like, again, we think and that's really just to illustrate. You think you have time in this league. You think, you're putting together a timetable and it's like, man, like we have at the very least, they're thinking we have through next season right now. That's not the case. Your days are numbered, and they're going to have to prove to Giannis very quickly that this can be competitive. And I don't know if it can. I mean, listen to these ages. Giannis is 28. Drew Holiday's 33. Chris Middleton's 32. Brooke Lopez is 35. Pat Connaughton's 30. Bobby Portis is 28.
None of these are young guys.
No.
And not just that. I mean, they don't have any young guys besides Grayson Allen. And he's what, 24 or 25?
He's 27. Grayson Allen isn't even young.
So yes, they are a very old team, Sean. They are banking everything on Giannis staying and these guys delivering with another chip.
Well, and even you look at what the Bucks have to work with too. They're going to have to make the most of whatever moves they can make. Because if you actually look at some of the moves that this team's made over the last couple of years, it didn't really work out.
Yeah.
Like I mean, they went and got Joe Ingles last year, who he was solid for them, but it didn't get them what they wanted. They were out in the first round. You remember how much they gave up at the deadline at last season, Troy, to go get who from the Nets? Jay Crowder to come and play significant basketball for them. He was almost immediately not a factor. And they spent multiple second round picks, like compensation, like cash. Like they gave up like some of the last actual pieces in the cupboard that they had left to go lose in the first round.
Yeah.
So
that's crazy.
I'll say this much. This is why I think the Pistons are going to be okay. This is why I'm really glad that they're doing what they're doing, because you talk about the importance of building long-term sustainability, having a program that you could definitively build back on, because the Bucks have a great culture. The Bucks, have put together a really solid, basketball program around Giannis over the last few years. But it's all contingent on Giannis. And once Giannis leaves, this team doesn't have an identity. This team doesn't have a nucleus. This team doesn't know what it is. If Cade were to be traded tomorrow, we know exactly what the Pistons are building. Like that's just the reality of it. So, for Milwaukee,
we'd be a little shocked.
Oh no, I'm not saying like it would throw the foundation of absolutely, but like what the Pistons are building for.
Yeah.
And like and what their vision isn't around like a specific person.
Right.
Whereas
is different. Yeah.
Whereas the Bucks, like, this is Giannis. Like this team from like everything about this roster was in the mind of how do we get Giannis to the championship? How do we win with Giannis?
Yeah.
And I'll say this much. If Giannis is indeed not going to be with the Milwaukee Bucks, they better not let him walk for nothing. I mean, Troy, if you let Giannis walk for nothing, I can't put into words how catastrophic that could be. Like, wow. Troy, this was a fun episode.
Yeah.
It really was. I missed
Giannis at the end. So
I am too. Thank you for doing that. Obviously, we miss our boy Jeff. He's going to be back with us next week when my dumbass actually gets up for the podcast. Be sure you go show him some love anyway. Tell him that you wish Sean wasn't an idiot so that he could have been on this week. But also, be sure you follow my guy Troy on Twitter at TroyCircuit44. You can follow me at Sean Halfcourt. And also, you want to make sure you subscribe to the channel because we have a litany of content coming from Halfcourt. Is taking things to the next level this season. So you're going to want to make sure you're here for it. But that, folks, is going to do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. We will catch you guys next time from Halfcourt. Be sure you're subscribed.